Thanks again for all of you who are joining us today. My name is Lori Jordan. I'm the Assistant Director of NAU Veteran and Military Services, and I get the great opportunity today to be the moderator so that we can hear firsthand from a few of our outstanding student veterans here on campus to share their unique student experience as a non-traditional student moving from full-time active duty to full-time student here in higher education. So I do have some pre-prepared questions, about 5 or 6 questions within our time of 50 minutes here. But it's for each of our panelists to answer. But I do encourage anyone to ask any questions that they have. They can put it right in the chat. Or if you feel that there's an opportunity that arises that you want to interject a question, that's great as well. But first, let me allow our participants each to introduce themselves and maybe your name, branch of service, what you did in the military, how long you served on full-time active duty, and really importantly, what is your field of study now here at NAU? I will start with Christina, because you're on the top left.
Okay, yay. Best for first.
Best for first.
So my name is Christina Kilby. I served 4 years active duty in the Marine Corps. My job while I was in was crash fire rescue, and my major in schooling now is exercise physiology.
Wonderful. How about Jason?
Hello, hello. My name is Jason Yonke. I spent 10 years in the Air Force, and my job was 1 in 3 linguist. And I switched from active duty to the National Guard. Been doing that for about a year now. And I'm also studying exercise physiology.
Thank you, Jason. And Dano?
Hey everyone, I'm Dano Knoble. I served for 4 years in the United States Marine Corps as a bandsman and ceremonial detail. I did that after I went to college the first time around, and I'm now back at school at NAU to study business administration.
Beautiful. And Dano, what instrument did you play?
I played the clarinet.
Awesome. Wonderful. And then our next panelist that will jump in a little bit is our master's degree student, Kevin Gagan, and he will jump in shortly. So my first question for each of you is, what motivated you to leave the military and instead pursue higher education after you served in the military? And then how did you decide your academic path? Jason, how about you go first?
Sure. So military life was being very transient after 10 years. I was just moving a whole lot, and I was ready to put down roots, be around family. And I chose higher education because, ironically enough, my career didn't translate into anything. And I picked exercise science because it covers the basis for physical therapists as well as physician's assistants. And those are 2 career fields that have a lot of growth ahead of them with demographics and all that.
You're absolutely right there. And Dano?
Sure. I ended up leaving the military mostly just because my contract expired at the time, but I was at a point in my life when I really had to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And so getting out, I realized that I had several amazing leaders while I was in, and ones that weren't so great. But I got glowing reviews from all of my junior Marines about my leadership style and the fact that I actually cared about them. And so I wanted to translate that into a business environment where I would be looking out for the little person, the little guy that needed help, because I didn't think that the way that politics and the economy were going, that was a field that had a lot of good representation. So I decided to go for a degree and become a project manager to help direct personnel.
I think you're definitely in the right field, Dano. Definitely. Christina?
What motivated me to leave the military? So the Marine Corps was kind of always a stepping stone for me. I also pursued college before I joined, so I knew that higher education was calling my name. And it's been a goal of mine for so long to graduate with a degree and pursue a master's degree. But a big portion of why I left the military was I was trying to salvage my mental health. I had a lot of struggles um, internally and a lot of external factors that came into play, but my transition time was rough and to say the least. And we can get into that later, but basically I wanted to go to college, and that's why I left the Marine Corps, and that's why I'm so happy I'm here at NAU right now, because this has been my dream for like 8 years.
Oh, I love that. And I know this, so I'm going to briefly let the audience know that all three of you are using what's called the GI Bill post 9/11. This is an excellent benefit. The benefit that I used was called Chapter 30. It was great, but this is 10 times better. It serves to cover all of your tuition and fees, as well as provide you book money and a housing allowance. So very well deserved for the time that you served our country or continuing to serve our country. So thank you. I do want to interject a really quick question because I think this is important. Can you tell me, Christina, why you joined the military to start?
So I have a very intriguing story as to what brought me to the military. But before I joined the military, I was doing women's rowing in college. And that was kind of like the hardest thing that I thought that I could do. So that's what motivated me to want to choose the Marine Corps. Like 7 out of 8 of my boatmates all went into the branch, like went into a branch or another, whether it was Coast Guard, Air Force, National Guard, and obviously Marine Corps and Navy. But another factor that contributed to it was, pardon me, sorry. I have an older sister who is 4 years older than me. And in back when there was a mass shooting at Route 91, my sister was involved in the mass shooting, and she got trampled and broke both of her legs. And that was a giant motivating factor for me to want to join, because I was tired of being fearless. I was tired of being fearful. I was tired of feeling helpless. I was tired of being defenseless. I wanted to join the Marine Corps because I wanted to protect my family. And a big motivating factor was my sister being involved in a mass shooting. And like, it was very impactful for me wanting to join the Marine Corps, because getting that call that your family member has been involved in a mass shooting there's nothing else like it. So yeah, that's a little bit about my background, why I joined the Marine Corps.
Oh, I appreciate that. What a story, goodness. And Dano and Jason, would you like to share why you joined the military? Not required, of course.
Sure. Yeah, I don't mind. So I was a music student the first time around at college, and I ended up having an administrative mishap happen on my account, and I ended up losing all of my scholarships, and I needed to figure out what to do to support myself financially, because my family was no longer in the area. So what I did is I called all the branches of service and set up auditions with all of them as a musician. And the Marine Corps offered me a contract on the spot, and I really had to decide whether or not I wanted to take that one immediately or wait for the other auditions. And my recruiter won me over when he talked about the core values of the Marine Corps being honor, courage, and commitment. And it really resonated with me. It was also going to be an incredible challenge for me because I was not really physically or athletically inclined at all. But I was determined to get through it, not just for my own survival, but because the challenge was there. And I kind of felt like I needed to prove to myself and to everyone who doubted me my entire life growing up that I had what it took to be as strong as I could be.
Yes, you just stepped completely out of your comfort zone and you rocked it. I love that. Jason, did you want to share?
Sure. Yeah, so I had been also going to college before joining the military. I was going to Yavapai down in Prescott, and I ended up finishing up an associate's degree there. And it was at about the time that the '09 economic crisis and all that was going on. So I was looking for ways to either pay for college and come up to NAU, or basically just make it in the world. And I talked to a recruiter just kind of about like what their options were as far as college goes. And I'd initially planned just doing the 4 years and ended up doing a whole lot longer than that.
Yeah, you did 10 years, right?
Yep, 10
Wow.
years.
And Air Force too. Love it. So you all are fairly new coming out of the military. So my next question is about, did you feel that your military experiences prepared you well for higher education? And if so, in what ways? Or on the other hand, were there aspects of your military training that you found challenging or difficult to translate into the academic setting?
I found that a lot of the day-to-day monotony when you're in garrison ends up translating really, really well into academic life. You have the discipline to hold yourself accountable for all of your own actions, to be well regulated and manage your time efficiently, because that's just expected of you when you're in the Marine Corps or in the services, and no one's going to hold your hand when you get to higher education. It's a lot different than high school, where you've got teachers that are looking out for you, or younger. And so having that internal drive and enthusiasm to excel on your own definitely helped me coming back to school.
I would definitely agree with what Dana said about, like, you definitely develop the discipline to kind of keep yourself on target while you're going to school after being in the military. And especially just like keeping up with your classes, taking responsibility for, if you chose to skip class or not, and things like that. The only thing that I can think of that was like, not like a difficulty with my military training, but just kind of surprising was, I don't know, I was very surprised when, like, out of my first class, people were just like playing games on their phones in the middle of lecture. And it's like, what are you guys doing? That's not what you do here.
Right.
But yeah, that's about it.
It's almost like you feel that because your time in the military, you're a team, and you feel like you're accountable for your peers. Then you come into higher education, and that accountability does not go away, right? And so you feel when they're on their phone, you're like, whoa, we don't do that. Yeah, that was a good point. Christina, do you have something to add for that?
I really struggled with my transition from military life to higher education. And I think that some of those difficulties came from the component of unpredictability. That was a big thing that kind of caught me off guard. And I also battle with PTSD. So managing my symptoms and being in a whole new environment, being around thousands of people was very overwhelming for me. And I'm still continuing to put in the work to work on myself and make sure that I'm bringing the best person forward.
Right. That unpredictability piece, that is a powerful statement that you just said, right? In the military, we know what we're doing, right? And well, not all the time, but in higher education is different, definitely. Did you find that your anything in your training specifically kind of supported your skills here at academics?
Yeah, I think like discipline, perseverance, all of those are components that I gained from my military training. And I was a firefighter while I was in, so there's so many components to that line of work that can transfer over, whether it's under the emergency medicine umbrella or not, like being on time, making yourself presentable, all of the small, minute details that add up into creating like a person as a whole.
Right, good points. And I think each of you, Dana and Jason, bring those same skill sets in. I agree. Our next question is, how did your experiences as a veteran, we spoke a little bit towards this, but to elaborate, your non-traditional students, young but non-traditional, to say the least. So how did your experiences as a veteran affect your interaction with your fellow student peers and your professors in higher education settings?
I think one of the biggest things for me is that personally, I was stationed at Marine Corps Base Quantico, so I was at the headquarters of the Marine Corps, and the average rank on base was like an 04. So there were officers everywhere. And as an enlisted, it's sort of drilled into your mind the officers are better than you. They're like at a higher standard. They're just like above your pay grade. You don't talk to them, you don't look at them, you just do what they say. And so that sort of respect for authority was drilled into me. But since I worked on a base that had a lot of officers, I got very comfortable speaking with people in much higher positions than myself, which translated really well when I came to university. And I'm able to speak to my professors without any sort of fear or intimidation factor. I feel comfortable speaking with them about any of my issues and being completely 100% transparent about any special requests that I might have as a student, like asking for an extension or whatnot based on circumstances, or informing them that I'm going to miss class because I'm sick. Like, I'm not afraid of the consequences because I understand, they're people too. And even though they're in places of authority, like there's got to be a mutual respect there. And that's definitely something that I've taken with me from my time in the military.
Yeah, to like piggyback off of that, the comfortability of being able to approach your professors and like follow up and not be intimidated, because a lot of people that are just coming into college who their last experience was high school, it wasn't that you could just walk up to your teacher in high school and be like, hey, I'm struggling, or maybe you could have, but there's different entities that contribute to the relationship with the normal student populace versus a veteran. And I think that veterans are just more comfortable with speaking with their professors. At least that's my experience. Like, I feel no shame in asking questions during class, raising my hand, which I see a lot of people do not raise their hands in class. A lot of people do not ask questions. And that comes with confidence and comfortability.
Right.
Yeah, I'd agree with all of that. The only real different thing that I could say just comes from I spent 10 years in, so I got to that non-commissioned officer level and was actually like managing people. So when talking to professors, I'm not afraid to just like inform them what's going on. I kind of worry that I have like, I don't know, that it comes off as rude sometimes, but it's just how I've gotten used to talking. And I've had to do a couple of group projects with other students who are like fresh from high school and in their freshman year. And yeah, for whatever reason, like I try to let someone else like take the lead if they want to, so they can have that development. But 9 times out of 10, it's always been like, okay, well, it's been 5 minutes, so we're gonna do X, Y, and Z, and da 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 da. So that's been kind of a different thing from being a vet.
Right. So you mean it's been 5 minutes and nobody's spoken?
Right.
That's true. And I love how you bring up the skill of being able to talk with your professors. It's such a valuable skill to have. And so that's important that you were able to hone that skill while you were in the service, which has made this journey a little bit of an easier experience. And on that same vein, what Jason was saying was working with groups and in the classroom. Do you feel like your background gave you that unique perspective in that classroom, or did it sometimes create challenges or misunderstandings?
I found that not only having a different experience being a non-traditional student based on experiences that I've had through the military or other, but also just being older than most of my student peers has given me a much different worldview. And I think that contributes to a difference in opinions or a difference in experiences that maybe most of the students that I am in class with haven't experienced. So it's sort of an eye-opening experience for them to hear from someone else who's been through different experiences. I've been using that word a lot, sorry. But it's true. We just have a very different outlook based on what we've lived through and what we've experienced. And I think being able to share that has been great. I know I've had professors call on me specifically being like, hey, like you were alive during XYZ events. Like right now in my freshman seminar, none of the other students were alive during 9/11. And that was something I was able to speak about. So it wasn't just coming from the professor.
Right. Absolutely. That depth and breadth that you're bringing to each of those conversations is just absolutely invaluable. And we know from professors love having veterans in their classrooms, and those that are currently serving. Christina or Jason, anything to add about that classroom perspective?
So most of my classes so far have been like 300-person lectures without a great deal of discussion going on. And I don't know, my appearance doesn't scream military, so it doesn't really come up all that often.
Where it comes up is in that group setting, where you have this knowledge and this experience and you're bringing that to the table, right?
Yes, it does.
And Christina, did you have anything for that?
Yeah, I actually, in my athletic injuries and preventative medicine class, I was able to share about some of my military experiences, like with the class as a whole, um, as well as my experience in college before being a student athlete. And that was really valuable. And after, my professor was like, yeah, how long did you row? You know, there was a rapport that was built. And a couple people from my class were like, oh, that's really cool that you served. Like, that's really cool that you lived in Japan. So there are a lot of my peers that are fascinated or look up to us as kind of like a big brother, big sister role. Kind of, I don't know. I know I'm like asking other students if they have snacks or whether they've eaten lunch or something like that. You know what I mean? But it's been fun, and it's definitely a really nice dynamic to participate in.
Right. I think it's interesting. And Jason and I were talking.
You've muted yourself.
You muted yourself.
The space bar only works for so long, I guess. You just hold down the space bar. Nevertheless, Jason and I were talking recently about, you just had mentioned that you're in classrooms right now with 300 people. So you're at the freshman level, but you're bringing in, all of you are bringing in credits with you. And so in Jason's scenario, he's starting as a freshman per se. And then next term, you're jumping up all the way to junior or senior time. So you're going to have a great opportunities to share your perspective in a smaller group setting. But I bring that up because that's a challenge in itself, right? Just having those credits that you're bringing from maybe different places. University of Maryland comes to mind. I don't know if anybody took courses at University of Maryland, but all these different courses that you're trying to bring together and fit into this puzzle to get your progression and your degree at the end of the day. And so that might be a challenge. One of the things I did want to mention, and you guys are all speaking at the positive aspects, which I love to hear. I have heard from the other side that it is tricky sometimes to be that non-traditional student in that room full of 18 and 19-year-olds. You know, like Jason, you're jumping up to a senior, but you had to start with freshman level. So you're working with students that are a lot younger than you. Did you find that challenging, or did you find that helpful for you?
A little of both.
Okay.
In some ways. Some of the challenges that come with it is just that, like, I don't know, like before working at the VSC, I'd come to NAU and spend like my 8 to 10 hours a day without any peers that I could just talk to.
Right.
Just because, like, like the life experiences and like the things you can relate to, it's just not at the same level quite yet.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if I had transferred like courses that I took before I joined the military to cover those freshman requirements, then that was 10 years ago. So I'd have been completely lost in the sauce. So be able to go back and take some of the introductory courses and having having the chance to just like actually sit down and like get that really strong foundation again without any of the distractions that would have come up for a traditional student is also really nice.
Absolutely. And you bring up such an excellent point, Jason, that I would love to share with our academic advisors. So you might be having transferable credits, but it could have been 10 years ago or 7 years ago that you had math, right? And so a refresher course is fantastic and needed in many cases.
I actually had that with a pre-calculus last semester.
Yeah.
Where like I had all the prereqs for it a decade ago. So I was going to class and then hopping onto Khan Academy or whatever to try to catch up on what I forgot.
Exactly. And did you learn about Khan Academy from your 18-year-old peer, perhaps?
No, that was a Google search over the summer.
But Christina, you nodded your head. Did you learn some things?
Yeah.
From
well, at first when I was getting tutoring for math, because I, like other veterans coming back to school, it's been like 8 years since I've taken a math class. So students who are just matriculating from high school to college have such a shorter gap. So it's fresh in their minds and it's like muscle memory for them. Whereas we haven't done this workout in 15 years or something like that.
Exactly. Yep.
I was just going to say,
please.
One of the other challenges that I faced, and I'm sure Christina can relate, is that a lot of veteran service members carry some sort of trauma along with them, whether it's an invisible scar or PTSD, things like that. And sometimes being around a bunch of people that you're very new to can be extremely overwhelming based on whatever your trauma is. I've had to leave my class a couple times to prevent an oncoming panic attack. And I've had to explain to my professors like, hey, just want you to know this is what's going on. I'm not trying to disrespect you or anything like that, but I needed to take care of something. And there's been incredible support here at NAU about that. Every professor I've spoken to about any sort of issue involving that has been like, thank you for trusting me with this information. Like, you didn't have to tell me that you were like why you're leaving the classroom or anything, but I respect what you've been through and your reasons, and thank you for letting me know. And they're very mindful about it. Like, I believe that they're going to look out for me, and if they notice anything like that, they'll go out of their way to make sure that I'm okay.
Yes.
But that has been one challenge that I've faced.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that vulnerability.
Yeah,
and our other students.
I was like, I think I can piggyback off that for a little bit if you're okay with me talking about it.
Okay.
But yeah, so I know when I first came and I was having like a lot of PTSD triggers, I was constantly scanning for like exits. And I brought up to a couple of my professors, like, there were some aisles that had too many chairs in them for someone to make a safe egress. And I literally like brought that up to my professors and were like, listen, this is unsafe. I used to do fire bill inspections. Like, this is actually out of regulation. And normally a normal student probably wouldn't be like, hey, this is, these chairs are too close together and I can't see my way out. So but that was obviously when my symptoms were pretty severe, and I've done a lot of work on my end, and I'm not in this spot like that, but I can understand that it's really easy for veterans to jump back into a time of fight or flight. So like dealing with that and managing emotions and different environmental factors is something to keep in mind, like when you're dealing with students who are continuing higher education after joining the military.
Right, and to have our professors and our instructors in our classroom, having them join military conferences like this is so valuable to understand that perspective coming directly from you, and thinking about that. Where are you putting the seating, and where are the exits, and whatnot. And I would love to bring up that our 18-year-olds and 19-year-olds, we running the Veterans Center, and we have a Veterans Center here on campus at NAU where they can come in and play pool, ping pong, relax, hang out, go to the computer lab, and then conversations ensue. and they might bring up the conversation of, oh, I'm with 18 or 19-year-olds that have no experience. And then we have to remember that some of our students that are our peers are coming in with tremendous experiences, positive or traumatic as well. And so all of this kind of translates to that we're all not alone, right? Like we're all dealing with our own scenarios. And perhaps you're with an 18, 19-year-old that has traveled the world and they have worldly knowledge as well. And that's just something that I just like to, it's just nice to think about, because it is easy sometimes to think that we're kind of alone in those situations. But the ideas that you're bringing up right now, particularly with the military and veteran community, is so valuable for our veteran, or for our instructors and staff members that support you to know about. So thank you for sharing that, Christina. The next question is, how have you found ways to engage here at NAU to help you, deal with some of these issues that you're bringing to the table, but also to build an affinity to the university and to help you make your journey in higher education memorable and positive? Is there some things that you have done, or I can switch it to say, what are some of the supports that you've used within NAU? We could start there, and then we can talk about that engagement and affinity piece. So let's talk about those supports.
For me, the largest support I found has actually been with the Veteran Success Center. My first day on campus, when I was coming to visit before I had enrolled, I went and I visited the Veteran Success Center. I actually met Lori my very first day on campus, because I was a non-traditional student, and when I was trying to enroll initially on my own at home, everything through the enrollment process seemed very much geared towards brand new incoming freshmen that were just graduating from high school.
Mm-hmm.
So I walked into the office and I was like, hey, I'm a prospective student. What should I do? And I got an overflowing deluge of support and resources that has helped me out immensely since I started the semester. And it inspired me to want to work for the Veteran Success Center, which I do now, to help other students through the process that I felt like needed assistance as a veteran. So yeah, the Veteran Success Center has been my biggest resource. Other than that, I've been contacted by several different offices upon my first semester. I mean, getting phone calls to set up appointments for student success and tutoring and career development. And it was just incredibly helpful as a student who is brand new to Flagstaff and campus to just be reached out to by these organizations and offices to just set up an appointment. And even if I didn't take advantage of it the day that I went in to just meet with them, I now have that resource in my back pocket to reach out to, and we've already got some rapport going.
Right. And I know just from you and our conversations that you had some community resources that you relied on as well.
Yes.
That was
yep.
great.
Yeah, I worked with a couple of in-town veteran resources like Nation's Finest to help find housing since I was moving between semesters, between the fall and spring semesters, because I was starting the spring, which was incredibly helpful because if anyone has gone apartment shopping in the Flagstaff area when school is in session, it is kind of a nightmare to find places that are available.
Right, absolutely. And I do have, Kevin Gagan was able to get out, so I'm gonna let him turn on his camera as well. We can bring in the Army perspective as well. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I was at another meeting off campus, so I'm in my car. So apologies. But
I would before
yeah.
can you introduce yourself really quickly? We do have about 15 minutes left, so I would love when we open it up for questions and our continuing questions here, I'd love you to put your ideas in, but your branch of service, what you
Right.
did and what you're studying.
Right. So I was in the Army for 10 years. I had 2 MOSs. I was first a 12 Bravo, which is a combat engineer, and then I was a 37 Fox psychological operations. I got out in 2020 and had a weird year, as everybody did with COVID, but then came here for graduate school in 2021. Yeah, go Army. But yeah, so I had a somewhat different experience starting with graduate school because I finished my undergraduate while I was online while I was still serving. And so the whole process was a little bit different. But in terms of resources, I'd have to agree with Dano. And actually, the VSC was the biggest resource for me because I didn't know what to do. The fact that even though I was a graduate student, this was my first time in a brick and mortar institution because I did my undergraduate online. So I was going through a lot of the same processes, but they weren't the same procedures as a lot of my veteran colleagues doing their undergraduate courses and enrollment. And so the VSC was just the biggest resource for me, not only professionally, because Lori and Pete are so hands on, and then they foster that to their student employees, but also that's how I made friends here. Those are now the people that work at the VSC and people that visit the VSC are now my friends that I hang out with socially. And really, the VSC was just the base point for my social network when I first moved to Flagstaff. And I knew that I had to do that just from the amount of time that I'd spent in the Army. I had I PCS 3 times and had 4 deployments. So I moved to new spaces where I didn't know anybody in the town frequently. And so I was doing that again with Flagstaff. And so I knew that if I didn't take initiative with branching out and meeting people, I would be that veteran that would just go home after school every day and be in my apartment in the dark. So I actively pursued the VSC and met people and also started working at the Veteran Success Center for Lori and whatnot. And that was really what helped me stay kind of above water in that sense. So yeah, they're the best resource.
Right. Yeah. And you did have quite a transition because you did everything online as an undergrad. So coming to your first brick and mortar college experience as a master's degree student was and you did beautifully, but I'm sure it was tricky. It was a tough go there to get the management of that all together. And then Christina and Jason, feel free. Was there anything on that note of places that may have supported you as you transitioned out of active duty to higher education?
Yeah, I totally 100% agree with the Veteran Success Center. Like this place has been a safe haven for me since before I even started going to school here. Like before the semester started, we went on a river raft trip with a ton of veterans, and some of those friends I still have and I hang out with all the time and are becoming now almost like family members because it's like a brother or sisterhood, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And the VSC has always been like just an enclave where you can just be yourself, find a safe space to work, to interact, to socialize, to eat your lunch all by yourself if you want to, but to play some ping pong. And the free printing and like the free meals, the free eat and greets. I love that. That like saved me the first semester with how many free meals they give away. And I cannot explain how much that was needed. And like still, even to this day, I go to every eat and greet. I I take advantage of all of the resources that are available here because I mean, it's just excellent.
Awesome. And I love to hear that from you all. And the beauty of the Veteran Success Center in my mind is that it's an opportunity. It's like a landing space. And then the hope is that as time goes on in your academic career, that you branch out into different extracurricular activities and engagement opportunities that are amongst and networking opportunities for your future career, of course. So in that vein, building on that affinity to the university and having that journey and doing what Kevin said, where did we lose you, Kevin? You there? But the idea of not and having that sense of camaraderie, so you're not going home by yourself. Were there some things, or are you planning to have some engagement opportunities, extracurricular activities, clubs, social things that that you've thought about doing or have done already here at NAU? And anybody can jump in on that one.
I went to the poker night that the SVA put on
Okay.
The SVA was hosting like poker nights last semester. I think the SVA partners with the VSC to put on a lot here, and that they are a great resource to get involved with.
That's a club situation. And I do realize that that all of the folks on the panel are fairly new to NAU, right? Dana, it's your first term. Christina, it's your second term. Jason, it's your second term. Kevin, it's his second, or this must be your third or fourth term.
You mean semester?
Yeah, semester.
Fourth.
This is your fourth semester. So you maybe haven't had the opportunity, although I highly encourage you to do, you know, volleyball or kickball or whatever you want to do in that vein. Or we've had a veteran here that joined ASNAU as an example. So that but doing the SVA, the Student Veterans of America Club, is an amazing thing as well. But doing that engagement piece just gives you that sense of, I keep saying affinity, but we love NAU, and you know, having this journey be really memorable for you is my hope for each of you. The next question I have is really one of our final questions, and I do encourage anyone from the audience, or if there's something that you all on the panel want to bring up, but I always love to hear what advice that you give other veterans who are considering pursuing higher education after the military ends. What would be some pieces of advice you might want to share?
I can jump in here, but forgive me for keeping my video off for this one. I know I missed a few of the previous questions, but if anybody was thinking about leaving the military for higher education and they were sure that they wanted to leave the military, I think that's a separate question of deciding to leave the military versus deciding to pursue higher education. So if the former is already decided, they know they want to leave and they're thinking about higher education, I say do it, because it is a different challenge for many. And like I said, even if you're like me, who completed their undergraduate while they were serving in active duty, it's still a completely different animal and challenge to navigate, because the structures are different and the contexts are different and the support structures are different, and it's just not the military. And so in that sense, I know this kind of ties over into some of the previous questions, but I think it's a good step in terms of growth, not even necessarily just academically, because, you know, of course you're going to get your degree, but because it's such a different environment, and depending on how long you served for, how much you're used to the military environment, and how sensitive you are to new environments and changing those factors in your life, it spurs growth, like emotionally and personally, because you're forced to adapt, and in a lot of ways you leverage the skills that you learned in the military, mostly to your benefit, but sometimes to your detriment. But all in all, it's a challenge and it's a new chapter in your life. And I think it's appropriate and beneficial to frame it that way, that this is a completely new chapter and in your life, and you have to approach it differently. You can't approach it the same way as the military. And I mean, there are some people that people that do 20, or I give kudos to them, of course, but everybody here at least got out for a reason, whatever it is. But I think it's beneficial to us as people to constantly change and adapt and grow. And I think choosing higher education as a system when you leave the military is a huge challenge, and provides you a huge opportunity to grow as a person.
Absolutely, Kevin. And you, I would love to hear your take on, we've already spoken about this, but it still leads into that advice that you would share with others as they're transitioning to higher education. But that interaction with your fellow peers, did you find any challenges with that coming from the military setting and then coming to higher education? And how did you overcome those?
Oh yeah. Well, I won't spill details, but I mean, I became very close with my professors and not very close with my peers. And there were a number of things that contributed to that. I know that I didn't cause any conflict, but I'm closer in age to some of my professors than I am to my cohort members. just having been in for 10 years. And so there was conflict there with a lot of my peers. And that's the approach that I took navigating higher education. I leveraged a lot of the military skills that I learned, like resiliency and adaptability, and how to talk to strangers and people, and how to navigate these things. And that caused a bit of conflict with my peers because they just weren't used to that sort of forward conversation or initiative, I should say, or behavior, I would guess. Things were pretty misconstrued, but they landed well with professors. And so I think conflict is going to be inevitable for most veterans in higher education, because even though we all have our different experiences while we were serving, there's a lot of commonality. And there's a commonality in the difference between being a veteran and not being a veteran. So whether or not you're Army or Marines or Navy or served for 4 years or 10 years, there's a commonality in that you're a veteran and you're going to be engaging with a lot of young adults that are not veterans. And I don't think I need to kind of expound on like what it means to be a veteran, but like that sort of encapsulates it all, like that difference. So I think conflict is going to be inevitable. And so in one sense, I would say leveraging your military expertise is beneficial to you because it helps you kind of take initiative. And there's data that shows that student veterans get higher GPAs and have higher graduation rates than non-veteran students. But at the same time, it will probably cause conflict with your peers, and you need to approach that differently. You can't resolve the conflicts with your peers the way that you would resolve a conflict in the military, because there is not that hierarchy, and there's not that the cultural and societal norms that are within the military are not the same outside of the military, and they're definitely not the same inside the system of higher education. So it can kind of be to a detriment, but the advice I would give to students, to veterans pursuing higher education, is to think about this entire experience and chapter as completely new and separate from the military. Take tools and skills that you learn forward, but do not approach it the same way, because you'll probably run into more conflict than is necessary.
Oh, that was powerful. Thank you so much. That is so true. And I just love that, keeping that growth mindset, that we're not going to be, pigeonholed into the fact that we are veterans and this was our experience. And so we're going to bring it here and treat everything the same way. We are going to grow every single day. So thank you for sharing that. And Christina and Jason, what advice might you share? And I don't think, Dana, you didn't, yeah. Anyone who wants to interject.
I would say for advice for veterans that are transitioning out of military into the school is actually take advantage of the resources here to help you. I'm not sure if it's military training or just a personality quirk, but for some reason, I'm like trying to chart out like, oh, what's my academic plan going to be? And just like doing all this Googling and research on my own. And it turns out you have an academic advisor and they're actually pretty great. And it's like, oh my gosh, I need to actually write what are they called? A resume, that thing.
Right.
Need to write a resume. And it's like, all right, how on earth do I write a resume? ChatGPT, write this for me. Or you could go to the Career Center and use that resource. So to actually use these resources out there that are meant to help you get started. That's my advice.
Excellent advice.
I would also advise that your higher education is not a sprint. I know as in the Marine Corps, it was very much you have to get everything done as quickly as possible, as soon as you can. And I found myself running into issues, feeling like I might be overwhelming myself with my own course load. Mm-hmm. And so I plotted out, how many semesters it would take me to finish my degree using the resources on Louis. And I realized that if 12 credit hours per semester is full time, and I can make my degree in 12 credits per semester, then I shouldn't push myself any harder than I have to, which would give me enough time to settle in and transition to higher education again, to get used to being an academic again, and sort of treat the experience as I had about 5 years or so between when I got out in 2017 until I started university again this year. But I wish I had started earlier, because higher education is a much easier transition, in my opinion, than going directly from military service into the civilian sector. I'm not saying you have less responsibilities, but it feels like there's more resources there to take care of you when you're going to higher education again. And I really wish I had taken advantage of that earlier, because I struggled very hard for about 5 years or so until I decided to come back. So that would be my piece of advice, is if you know you're getting out and you know you want to use your education benefits, do not take a break. That'll be worse for you in the long run, in my opinion.
Perhaps this is a bit of a softer landing, right? To get, and then and they have support along the way. Anything to add from you, Christina?
Well, higher education was kind of rough for me to transition to, but that was because it had been like 4 years since I went to college before, and COVID. So everything went from, I still used to hand in papers before, to now everything is electronic and you need apps to access other apps. And that whole component, that kind of jump, was daunting for me as a student. So if I could just tell my old self, I would let her know to look at Blackboard and memorize Blackboard a lot more, and that it's not just, hey, you can just show up and things are going to come to you easy, that you have to put in some effort before, and that it'll help you in the long run.
Excellent. And did you utilize a VetJack mentor at all when you came?
Yes,
okay.
I had the best VetJack. I'm just kidding. No, he is the best. But Derek was my mentor, and he was amazing and got me in contact with all of the career opportunities that I've had that are matriculating me within my career field to this day, even externally, not even having anything to do with school. Job opportunities, certification opportunities. So the VetJack resource navigators are a giant help to whoever is coming back into academia after transitioning out of the military.
Excellent. And this has been an absolutely wonderful conversation. I didn't see any, we are running out of time, or we have ran out of time, but I didn't see any questions in the chat. Did anybody have, before I wrap it up, does anybody have one last question from the audience?
I do have one quick question. Yeah. Well, hopefully it's a quick question. My name is Nicholas Diaz. I'm a CEFN's academic advisor for all the biological sciences. And so I would ask you, as the students, what would you appreciate I do to better help you?
I'm sorry, you said you're an academic advisor?
Correct.
I mean, just from my experience with working with the VSC for about 1.5 years and dealing with students, going through their process, I guess my advice would be to I'm trying to not generalize, but because not everybody is the same, but veteran students should probably be approached differently than your 18, 19-year-old freshman in terms of advising. I've heard a lot of anecdotes from students coming through here that are very frustrated with their advisors because they're not treated like adults. And even if you serve for 3 years, which is, the minimum, you're at least 21 and may have even deployed to combat, which is an experience that many people don't have. And so you grow up real fast with that. And so, at the risk of saying that veterans are special or anything like that, I just think they need a different approach, even just a different lens to view their academic journey, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And I did not serve. I did go to school late in life, and I definitely understand what it's like to sit in a room with 21-year-olds when I'm 35. And, the maturity and mentality is very different. I'm like, calm down. Why aren't you turning in your homework? But yeah, no, I will never understand certain aspects, but I try to treat all of my students very differently. I try to create academic progression plans that are very different from everyone, and I advise not to go off the academic plans online because every student is different. Everybody's path is different, and I try to help as best as I can. So
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I mean, and just as student veterans, I know at NAU we do in FOS 131, they get kind of like lessons and just really talk about how to approach like faculty and your peers, your fellow students as a student veteran, and how to bridge those gaps between between everybody. And I just think that's a lot of students and faculty, because as we talk about that, they may not be used to like how forward a student veteran may be, or how blunt, or like may misinterpret questioning the lesson as challenging them or something like that. And I have heard from some students that they experience that sort of dynamic with their advisor, where they're taking initiative and trying to plot out their academic curriculum, and the advisors are just kind of taken aback because they're not behaving the same way as the non-veteran students.
I was gonna say,
and then there's like an ending session. So I'll let Dano say his statement, and then we'll wrap it up. But please.
Sure. Two things real quick. Is the first one is that student veterans also have priority enrollment access. And I know that not all academic advisors are aware of that or how the dates line up for that. So being aware of that is super important, because we definitely stress that in the VSC, that to take advantage of that resource. And the other thing is that a lot of student veterans either know what sort of track they want to follow in their major, which is unusual for incoming freshmen, either based on their military experiences or the fact that they've had more time to think about it growing up. And so I found a lot of struggle trying to speak with my academic advisor to get coaching on like the direction that I want to go for my career and what would be the best major and the classes I should focus on. And instead I was sort of put into the same track as every business major that came through, to the point where my major was assigned to something that was completely not related to what I wanted to do. I was business economics when I wanted to be management. So just to have that open dialogue with the students, because they probably have a lot more insight than the regular graduating senior from high school.
Absolutely.
Do you mind if I jut in really quick, just about learning about the different benefits and a little bit about like certifying the classes and what needs to go into that might be helpful for an academic advisor to learn, but having a lot of humility and just working. Sorry, I'm trying to talk fast. And I just, it takes a lot of humility, and it takes a great person to be able to look at and be like, how can I better serve you? So I really commend you for like being as the academic advisor, saying, what can we do for your populace? That's amazing. And I think you're doing a great job. And I think we're lucky to be students here.
Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you.
And Nicholas, great question. And then Scott Heflin actually has a session that's been recorded that's specifically for academic advisors to go over benefits and all that good stuff.
Oh, I just came from that.
That was a great segue.
Yeah.
So let's peel off, and thank you so much, panelists. You all have such incredible insight. I so appreciate you all and the audience members. And this will be recorded, as I mentioned, and we'll jump to the other room.